This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC London Edwards versus Brady, giving you my thoughts, predictions on the entire 13-bout card taking place in the O2 Arena. We've got the return of, Leon Edwards. I wanted to give you a descriptor because both of these guys have, to me, the similar problem where they're kind of a head case and we don't know what we're going to get. So it's going to be an interesting main event. Okay, we've got the former champion and we've got a guy in Brady who, there was high hopes for him, and then you kind of see the holes in his game. There's just a lot to talk about with that main event, and we'll get through that. Before I talk about these bouts, I wanted to give you my initial thoughts on the Kutateladze versus Vettori card because there's a lot to talk about. So, yeah, you can skip, but we're gonna talk about this. Starting with the first fight, Giudice defeats Dubin. I actually ended up betting Giudice. Unfortunately, I took her to win and round number 2 to start. She ends up just blasting Dubin. Well, now we found out Dubin truly is what we expected. She's a tough girl, runs through opponents, but she's not quite there yet. I'm interested to see in her next sophomore outing in the UFC. Giudice paid her dues, but she was minus 300. I had to find a way to bet her, but, it is what it is. Priscilla Cachoeira, she catches the bitch with a fucking uppercut. I initially thought that was going to be a major part of the game plan, which it was. It landed beautifully. And Cachoeira, she had a ridiculously long post-fight speech for Nunes. I expected her to try a little bit harder. She was just kind of like a punching bag. This is the worst I've seen of Nunes. And given the fact that she even attempted a takedown was a sign in the right direction. But, it is what it is. Lima looked god tier against Barres. Like, he looked ridiculous. He cashed in, first leg of my parlay. No problem there. Hughes does what Hughes does, and she cannot keep getting away with this. She cannot mid herself to victory. And I don't say that because I don't dislike that I dislike Hughes. I think she's tough, she's gritty, and she does find a way. But it was round number 1, Luciano for me, and round number 3, Luciano for me. Obviously, round number 2 could have been a 10-8. I didn't quite see it that way, but it was teetering. To me, it was either Luciano 29-28 or it was a draw. Round number 1 for Sam Hughes is rough because she was moving forward and getting popped in the mouth, and I guess sometimes that's enough, especially for me. I love that. I love when women go forward and get popped in the mouth. Carlos Vera, oh boy, that was the only way he could have won that, is by Mousasi being a bitch. And that's the thing, the booty scoot from Vera was like, I hated it, but it literally froze up Mousasi. Like, what in the world do I do with this? This is incredibly, you know how Africans are. They don't like that homosexual poo-poo in the mouth kind of shit. They hate that shit. So he was like, I'm not going down there with him. But that led into him being so tentative that ridiculously good, beautifully timed head kick landed, got his neck taken. He defended the choke well up until, it got sunk in. But for Vera, man, his time is going to come. Mousasi, I'm not done with him yet. I think, obviously, the odds were ridiculous. I didn't end up betting this guy, but it was, like, nuts. So I wouldn't say he's been fraud checked, nor Luciano. I don't think she's a fraud. I think she just got a tough out, and she looked good in that fight. Now, what's funny about you versus Cunningham, you was like minus 700 before the fight started. When the fight was happening, he dropped down to like minus 500, and he already banked in round number 1. AJ's face was getting busted up. He was red as fuck. I max bet him to no end. Whatever I had in my Bovada account, I blasted. It was like maybe $300-400 just to win like $70. That was easy money to me. Probably not the wisest thing, but it was easy money. Nonetheless, he dominated. I actually also took inside the distance for you, and there was a couple times that it was close, but Cunningham's a tough guy. And it just sucks because Cunningham, he has something about him that I want to see him succeed, but they need to give him like a layup here. I don't think they will. Ryan Spann. Now, I did bet Spann. I believed in Spann, and now I really want Spann, who is what did I call him? Ryan Low Attention Spann. This guy he looked ridiculously bad. I was flabbergasted. His chin held up. I was like, at least I was right about that. Like, his chin held up decently up until he got knocked out. But Acosta, he felt his punches, and he's like, he's got nothing for me. he's throwing spinning back. It was just the most, like, I want Ryan Spann to go live in the mountains in a cabin so he doesn't bother anybody, because that was tremendously bad. For Acosta, unfortunately, I think the same things are true. Like, he's got talent, but he's beating bums, and I don't know how to gauge the Ryan Spann win, because is Ryan Spann now an absolute bum? He fought like one. It was really rough to see. But Acosta, I know he's going to get better opposition, but we'll see with him. We'll see what they give him. But at the very moment, man, that ain't good for Spann. Kevin Vallejos cashes the second leg of my parlay, easily knocks out Sung Woo Choi. Funny enough, I was going to bet Vallejos and the next guy we'll talk about. The thing about Vallejos, I did mention, I felt a little salty. I don't know if I was the first one or the only person to mention that he kind of reminds me of like Ilia Topuria, because the moment you bust that out, you'll get people be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're comparing them. I'm like, yeah, they fight very similar. Then everyone's talking about, if you don't see shades of Ilia Topuria, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, shit, I saw it a long time ago. I had the balls to admit it. But yeah, this kid is very good. There's going to be some issues here. He's not like scot-free. He's very good. I'm not going to shit on him in his big moment. He got a first round knockout, but we will discuss his shortcomings later when we see him. At this very moment, he had a perfect opponent to just counter, and he beat his ass. Good guy, Kevin Vallejos. He's already talking trash to John Silva, and I think it's like a friendly rivalry. They're just kind of talking mad shit to each other. Brandon Ribeiro defeats Dair Nargozi. I won't lie, I was feeling a bit frisky from max betting you, and I'm like, yo, let me blast a parlay with Vallejos and DR. But then it hit me. I'm like, DR missed weight. Why did he miss weight? So I was asking, like, did he get injured? Some idiot on the Discord, you know who you are. He said, yes, he's injured. Lo and behold, he actually bet him. But I actually ended up going with a parlay with the fight doesn't go the distance, just in case what Brendanson did happen. I did not in a million years expect him to sweep him from bottom with a Kimura and submit him. But yeah, that was rough because DR looked terrible. Brendanson didn't look great. He just happened to fall into the trap that is Ribeiro's long ass arms. But yeah, props to him, man. He took the over, undefeated fighter. Again, Nargozi wasn't this big prospect on my list, but you could see he had some talent. We'll see what they give him. Like, if fucking Ihor Pretoria decides to, like, I don't know, give back some of the money that his country stole from us and, get back into the good graces of UFC, and they pair him up with Nargozi, then Nargozi is going to be the max bet. I'll say that. Damar Blackshear defeats Cody Gibson. Now, the perception could be that Cody Gibson was the side all along. He just ended up getting swept. No, Cody sucks. Damon Blackshear just let him play. He's like, oh, the way I saw that fight, it was a bit scary because he was the third leg of my parlay, and instead of actually betting Vallejos and Nargozi in that max bet, I actually put like whatever was in my bank account at that time, the Bovada, like $400 or $500 on a parlay between Vallejos and Blackshear. So I had double money on Blackshear, and it wasn't looking great. But in perspective, it was essentially Blackshear being the dominant African king that he is, letting this white guy, unathletic, giving him hope. And that was messed up of Blackshear. It's like when you're fighting with your nephew and he's like hitting you, and it kind of hurts a little bit, but you think to yourself, like, he doesn't know what's coming. I'm going to give him that false sense of security. The moment he got on top of him, he started blasting him. He got taken down. You see Blackshear just cool as a cucumber, and you see Robbie, the bad motherfucker Lawler, just like time is coming. He sweeps him from bottom, gets on top of him. He Kimuras him. Beautiful work from Blackshear. I think his improvements are absolutely showing. For Gibson, he can hopefully pray that they tax Damon Blackshear enough so that way he feels better about himself. Let's just go with that. Alexander Hernandez versus Kurt Holobaugh. Let me talk to you about MMA judging if you want to hear about this. I saw it very, very close, right? Very, very close. I took Hernandez. I had a secondary parlay. I had doesn't go the distance for Ribeiro. I had Damon Blackshear just to win. I had Vallejos inside the distance. And I also had Alexander Hernandez round number 2 starts and for him to win. All to win like maybe a unit with like whatever was left over from my winnings that day. Alexander Hernandez got a 30-27, I think twice. And that, to me, was not a good scorecard. But understanding MMA judging, I can give you an indication of why it was scored that way. Round number 1, to me, was Alexander's up until he got put in that guillotine. With submission attempts, depending on the judging, if you have a very clear shot of what's happening, if I am here and I am seeing the action and I see that that choke is not locked in and I see Fernandes give a thumbs up, he's like, whatever, there's time left. The thought of the judge could be, that's not a threat. I think the work that he did prior to getting put in that situation is still good enough. A little too late for Holland. Holland did some decent work, but the cleaner shots were Fernandes. Okay, understandable, I get that. But to me, I would have given that to Holland because he had the visually more appealing fight finishing moment. Same thing could be from the other side. Like, you can't tell. You can only see him giving the thumbs up. You got to go with what you think is your thought process. Round number 2, very, very close. Very close because Holland was stalking this guy, beating him up until maybe, I don't want to say half the round had passed. I think over half the round. Fernandes finally decides to get takedowns, and he does some damage, but it was still very, very close. Understandable if you want to give it to him, but a lot of the damage came from Holland. And I have a moral to this story at the end. And then third round, all Fernandes. When I heard those 30-27s, I'm like, oh shit, Fernandes won, no doubt about it. But to me, it could have gone 29-28 Holland or 29-28 Fernandes, just based on what the perception of the judges were that day. When it comes to damage, it was primarily in the part of Holland. And what I find very funny is a couple weeks ago, there was a fight where a guy did a lot more damage, and the opposite happened where the guy got taken down. He got held down, no damage happened, and people were claiming that the guy who had the top control won. That was Francis Marshall versus Marion Santos. Now the opposite is happening. The damage is happening on the feet. Not a whole ton of damage is happening on top from the guy on top. And now people are saying it's a robbery. Which one is it? Is it you want top control to win the round with no damage, or you want damage to win the round? So again, it just depends on the judging. And in this case, I think it was a much cleaner victory for Fernandes. The 29-28 was more accurate than the 30-27. That's egregious. But yeah, for Holland, he can't wrestle. So what are you going to do? Chidi beats the shit out of Zaleski. Zaleski, like, I was hoping this would be the case. I picked Zaleski. I was happy I was wrong. I think a lot of people were shitting on Chidi, but it was just like, if Chidi shows out and he fights intelligently, he did get taken down, he gets back up. Like, I'm liking the improvements of Chidi. I think this whole shit gets kind of blown out of proportion, but it's hard not to because he's not fighting to his best ability. But this was a good sign. Maybe, I don't think 170 is the best for him, but I am glad that he got the win over Zaleski. He ends up nasty kneeing him in the mouth. I'm just happy for Chidi. It's just, I was very happy to be wrong there. And then the main event, Kutateladze defeats Marvin Vettori. I had it 48-47 Vettori. I'm sorry, not Vettori, Kutateladze. And the reason for it, I had round number 1 and round number 3 for Vettori. The rest were Kutateladze, primarily on the lack of activity of Vettori. And when I mentioned this fight being broken down, there's also the talk about the eye pokes. In my scorecard, had there been an eye poke and a point deducted, it would have been a draw on my scorecard. And the reason I gave it to round number 1 for Vettori, I thought he was the cleaner striker. Roman, as I mentioned in the breakdown, is not clean. He throws a lot, but are you going to reward shots that don't land cleanly, but they make sound? Sometimes. And in this case, they did reward him, and it is what it is. Either way, I still saw Roman winning. I just find it hilarious that, horrible technique and non-clean landing shots are going to win you a fight. And it happens a lot. But given the fact that had there been different judges and, say, for example, boxing judges, like 3 Tony Weeks are judging this fight, Vettori wins this fight based off of the effective, boxing that he had. He was cleaner, landed the better shots. He actually marked up Kutateladze more than Kutateladze marked up Marvin, and he got rocked too, which was like, it was like a washathon. Both of these guys did not look good. It solidified to me that Marvin, had he had more activity, I think he could have done better. He just chose not to. And for Roman, that was max effort, at least in my opinion, and it looked bad. So the middleweight has gone down real bad. But those are my thoughts on that. I'm going to get right back into this bout here. So let's talk about Edwards versus Brady, and I'm going to give you some general thoughts on this entire card, starting with, let me get to the right area, First fight of the night, we've got Kutateladze versus Fernandes. -425 for Guram, the Georgian Viking. Come back on Fernandes, plus 330. Let me just say, the odds on Guram are egregious, but I already took him. I already parlayed him. And despite the fact that I parlayed him, I want to explain that this guy is incredibly talented, but this dude could completely be the guy that, like, he could be the biggest bonehead of the night. And I'll explain. This dude, to me, is way better than Cowie. He's good for about a round, but the guy is just he's just not it for me. He tires. He has not shown to be elite. This, to me, seems like a layup for Guram, but last time they gave Guram a layup in Elvis Brenner, it didn't go well for him. And then they gave him Jordan, which we'll talk about him. I don't want to get into Jordan specifically, but Vucenic. But they gave him Jordan, and he did not look like himself until round number 2. He had to get hit in the mouth and nearly dropped and he did get dropped and knocked out to then come back and perform. The thing about Guram is we know the talent's there. The guy can wrestle. The guy trains with like Ilya Topuria, all the Georgian fucking monsters out there, Merab. He also trains with, obviously, in All-Stars with Chimaev. This guy's got great wrestling. He's got great defensive wrestling. He's got ridiculous striking, but he's got a specific type of striking style that can be penetrated with strikes. His grappling has gotten better. This guy is so good that the odds reflect it. I don't think he should be that high. I'm just dumb enough to bet him at that as a parlay. Again, Cowie, this guy's fighting people who are no longer in the UFC. Jordan's a good fighter. We're going to talk about Jordan. So him getting, hurt, the issue with Guram is that he was incredibly gun shy in that fight. It took him a while to get going, and then when he did get going, it was beautiful to see. Like, man, this guy still has it. I want to see, because if the best version of Guram comes out, he destroys Fernandes. Cowie is very dangerous in the early rounds. The fact that you saw him beat the biggest bum in the face of UAE history in Muhammad Yahya doesn't mean a damn thing. That was meant to happen. I think I even broke it down, that fight. If Fernandes does not knock him out in the first minute, this guy's a bum, and he took forever to knock him out because that was expected from him. I think Guram beats him everywhere. I think he can stuff takedowns. I think he's good on the feet as well. He's going to be the bigger guy. He can do whatever he wants, and I predict he can finish him. I think he can get him out of there in like round number 2 or 3. More than likely round number 3, he's going to attack the body. But Guram is just such a liability at these odds that it's ridiculous. Again, I've only bet him on one parlay, and if he wins, great. It could be another sweat like the Jordan fight. But I feel as if I'm going to bet on somebody, if he is the best version of himself, the odds look great. I do think he beats him 8 out of 10 times. But again, it's going to be a bit of a sweat for me if it is kind of a close round number 1. But I think Guram is not a fraud. I think he just kind of he's had a rough time out. He looked his absolute worst in a fight, and he still managed to come back and win that fight against Jordan. That's a very good sign for him, for his confidence. He fought Elvis Brenner, who he was beating the shit out of, nearly put him out of there, and then he got caught with a shot that just rattled him. And I think he kind of had his self-doubt. It's over for that self-doubt. Come out here and perform, put away Fernandes, and then we can talk and get a bigger opponent. He's been away. He's had injuries. I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table here. Next bout, we've got Loughran versus Nathan Fletcher. I was so desperately wanting to fade Fletcher here, but watching the tape on Loughran was rough. He is plus 130 here. Come back on Fletcher, minus 160. I initially thought that Loughran could come out here, out-wrestle Fletcher, maybe get some top control, tire him out. My narrative initially was pre-tape. Fletcher maybe doesn't have the best striking. His grappling is great, but his striking's kind of mid. His fight in the UFC, the first fight with that Zigomatas Ramasca, was a little rough, but he ended up pulling it out. I still predicted he would win. I actually bet him to win. And then you see like he lost to Khan Offley in the tough house, and he got dominated with the wrestling. But the difference that I saw was that Obviously, Khan has much better jiu-jitsu. He was able to control him. He's a black belt. Loughran, decent offensive boxing, terrible defensive boxing. He is strong. He can take you down. He does not move his head. He is so robotic. He is so stiff. And when he does shoot, let me check my notes here, because he does have a 100% takedown accuracy. I don't expect him to get taken down. Hence me thinking Fletcher might be like a fish out of water. He shoots his shots. He does leave his neck exposed, and Fletcher does have nasty jiu-jitsu. When looking at the tape on Fletcher, his striking's not as bad as I thought. He's actually very fluid. He has some decent kicks, some decent punches. He's kind of got that like Paddy the Batty type of karate style. And being that he's dropping back down to bantamweight, unfortunately, as much as I wanted to take dog odds on the Don, I think Fletcher wins this one. I think he kind of shows that if you can keep it on the feet and maybe even take his back in Loughran, he hasn't really fought many good jiu-jitsu opponents. You know, they both come from the Cage Warrior scene, so I'm expecting they kind of know each other well enough. I'm excited to see what Loughran can bring to the table, because like I'm not sold on Fletcher quite yet. He is very talented. It's just I'm not sold on him, but I'm going to take him to win by a decision. I think this could be another one of these like bloody affairs where Colin gets hurt. Again, I didn't bring this up earlier, but the British crowd is going to be obviously in huge favor of the Brits. So anything that happens, either a missed punch or a whiff punch or a kick that doesn't land, crowd's going to go nuts, and that's going to influence the judges. And I expect that to be the case here, unless Colin takes him down and just dominates him. I don't really foresee that happening with the type of guard that Fletcher has. Give me a decision for Fletcher. Again, I'm a little disappointed. And speaking about disappointed, Joe, boy, talking about this fight, this is how I feel. Like, man, when people were to ask me, what do you think about this card? What do you think about this fight, the Bannon versus Tomar?
I don't know. I don't like this. Can I go?
Yeah, that's how I feel about this fight. Bannon versus Tomar. Pooja Tomar. The Cyclone versus Mama B, minus 185 for Bannon. Comeback on Tomar is plus 155. Brother. Tomar is not good, but there's positives to her, I suppose. Rewatching her UFC debut, it was rough. This girl is a sidekick merchant. She's very one-dimensional. She throws just to throw. She kias her way to just, it's so annoying to see her fight. Not much off of her back. Very, very low level, but I guess on the spectrum, she's not at the very bottom, but very close. Bannon is not too far off either. The difference with her is like they both have this kind of karate style. I think, I swear to God, man, I swear, when talking about Bannon, by the way, huge MILF energy coming from Bannon. She's only 31, but like the MILF energy from her is just ridiculous. It's just oozing out of her. She's apparently a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I am hoping I am wrong. I don't want to be right about that. I read that she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. What else do I have here? She's mostly a kicker, terrible bunches. She blitzes in. I think between the two, her kicking game is a little bit more diverse. It's a little bit better. It's more like style-wise. Pooja just kind of throws the side kick. That's it. And then when she leaps in, she kind of like punches up in the air. Same with Bannon. It's a terrible, terrible fight. The difference is Bannon, given you ignore the approach that she might have, this is a striking matchup. She's got the better ground game. I'm very impressed by her ground game, being that she may or may not be a real black belt. Yeah, I don't like this fight at all. I think this could go either way, because no person, I think Pooja would have the hometown crowd, being that this is, the UK. There's a lot of Indians there, mostly Indians. So I don't know. I think obviously you can go with the dog here. I don't want anything to do with this. So I'm gonna go with Bannon by decision. This is not like I don't care about this fight. I would not be surprised. I would hope that they both throw kicks and they both knock each other out and it ends in a draw. But this is so low level that I don't want to get into it. Like it's so bad. I don't care what either of these girls bring to the table. This is not about the women in this. It's just their skills do not translate into what I think is going to be an entertaining fight. Or it could be so bad it's a slot fest and it's the fight of the night. If this hits the ground, Bannon's going to have the advantage. If it's on the feet, it's going to be a slot fest with both girls are trying to keep distance because they both need distance and not a lot's going to happen. Whoever lands the first toe to the stomach is probably going to end up being the winner, and I don't want any money on that fight. So give me Shanna Bannon because I cannot with Puja Tomar. It's not good. Next bout, we've got Andre Pulyaev versus Christian Leroy Duncan. We've got another Contender Series debut plus 410 on Pulyaev. Christian Leroy Duncan plus 550. Now, plus 550 on a guy who's fighting in his home country. You know, there's a lot to say about him. There's some issues that I have with Leroy Duncan here. But when taping Pulyaev, I instantly said in my brain, Leroy Duncan spinning back kick, TKO. It's all going to be with the body. So with Leroy, just to speed through him, athletic as all hell, crazy kicks, taekwondo style, improving takedowns, nasty ground and pound, not quite ready for like the elite of the division. We saw that when he fought RoboCop, but he survived RoboCop. Despite him looking bad, we know RoboCop is very good. He just hits hard. He just is a marauder. What I will say about Duncan, I don't think his punches are all that powerful. Like he's a big dude. He's what 6'7", 79-inch reach, but I don't think he has a lot of power, like God-given power in his punches. What I do think is that he mixes things up incredibly well. Elbows are devastating, like body shots, knees, flying knees. He's got such a diversity that it's hard to ignore that he is a whirlwind of just nastiness. Pulyaev, why is he a big dog? When you tape the guy, this guy was a dog in the Contender Series. He beat that dude, Liam Anderson. And to me, man, I don't want to say he's a bum beater. He's not bad. But when you see that he's a Russian, ends in Ev, you start thinking this guy can wrestle. He's a brown belt, I believe, in jiu-jitsu. So he's not terrible. But this guy, and you're going to hear it here first, hopefully, this guy is Russian Rainier de Ritter, minus the ridiculously good ground game. His striking's not bad. He has a nasty left kick to the body, but his striking's just not, he's very awkward. He's incredibly awkward. And can he catch Leroy on the feet? Probably. It's a possibility. I just don't foresee it happening. The speed of Leroy, this guy's so kind of, he looks like he was born too big for his body, and he just doesn't know how to maneuver it. But he's a solid dude. He hits hard. He can throw punches. He can take things to the ground. I just think Leroy at this moment is just a step or two ahead of this guy. And if he attacks the body, he's going to hurt him. I saw his first TKO loss for Pulyaev, and he lost to a guy who's doing pretty well. But the signs that I saw in that fight were not visibly appealing. He lost to a guy named Anverbek, God knows how to pronounce it, Bekov. Round number 1 TKO punches. This guy, like, you have to Google this guy. Anverbek. Google his name and his highlights. That's how I found this finish in his highlights. Pulyaev gets hit and he's covering up. And he's covering up for a very long period of time. It's almost like he is begging the ref to stop it, but the ref's like, no, I need to see you go down. But he's just covering up, gets hit to the body. He decides to take a knee for a second, gets back up, kind of hoping, like, please don't let me take a knee. Like, I'm done fighting. He gets eventually hit more and more, and then he finally takes a knee and they stop it. It was not good. He did not fight back at all. Hence, I think that if Leroy can catch him right to the gut, like a John Bones Jones style spinning back kick to the gut really hard, it could really hurt him, make him like keel over, and then that's when Duncan's going to unload on him against the cage, maybe take him down, land elbows. But I do think the spinning back kicks and stuff are going to really be effective here, getting and generating that power to hit him to the belly. Pulyaev, though, he's not bad. He's not bad at all. It's just that they're giving him the UFC. I think they know what they're doing. They got this guy who looks, decent. He's a Russian. They brought him in and they're feeding him the CLD in his home country. I think they kind of planned this all along. So give me Duncan by TKO. I'm going to say round number 2. Next bout, we have got Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. Minus 140 for Tybura. Come back on Parkin plus 115. I've already bet Parkin. All right, I have him on that parlay with Garam. I saw him at like minus 114. I think at the moment it might have changed. So it is like a pick 'em. Let me take a look. Where is Parkin? It's getting to like minus 115 on Bookmaker. Bet Online has him plus 105. Bovada minus 103. So you can probably still find him as like a dog, but it's roughly, actually, scratch that. I'm reading this wrong. He's the favorite now, minus 125 through Bet Online for Parkin. So the lines have been switched. So if you couldn't get Parkin at a dog odds, here's the thing. You got the complete jackass narrative of Mick Parkin trains with the champ, thus he should beat him. Also, Mick Parkin trains with the champ who recently is the last man to knock out Tybura, thus he should beat him. I don't quite see it that way, although that does help. With Mick Parkin, I don't quite think he's elite, but he is so good at the meat and potatoes of things. He's got good striking on the feet. He's got good enough takedown defense, good enough jiu-jitsu, and that is what helps with him. He does train with Aspinall, the fastest heavyweight. He does train with Aspinall, who has nasty jiu-jitsu for a heavyweight. Tybura is incredibly live always, all the time. But when you see his victories and who he has been beating, it's guys with zero ground game. And out of his last, say, 4 fights, he has been hurt in one way or another in those 3 fights. If you hurt him, Denise, for example, I specifically said Denise should beat him. He just cannot fall into his little spider web, and that's exactly what he does. And by that is he goes to the ground with him. Let him get back up, crack him again, and then let the ref do the rest of the work for you. Let the ref say it's over. Because if he hits his head and he bounces off, but he's still there, that glazed look is enough. But when you start hitting the guy, you're going to give him an opportunity to grab you. And that's the thing. Mick Parkin, if he hits him, he will follow up and he will finish him. And I do predict he will hurt him at a certain point because Tybura's takedowns aren't the best. They're not the greatest. I think Mick Parkin has good enough cardio, but don't get it twisted. Tybura, this is a very good fight for him to bet, I think, live. If Parkin is, say, becoming a bigger favorite, and I say this as a guy who already bet him, but I bet him as a dog, so I don't feel too bad about it. But I do think the upside is on Parkin. He is 10 years younger. He is still a little green, but I've seen what he can do. And I think he's, again, that meat and potato style where he can be very safe and just unload. Him getting that knockout against Bresky was a good sign in the right direction. It's just, will Mick Parkin be mentally aware to not give Tybura any sort of opportunity? And I think the answer is yes. I think Mick's going to be more than prepared. At this point, like, Tybura's an absolute, I was going to say legend. He's a vet. He's been in every situation. He knows how to fight hurt. Mick definitely, I don't think he can. I think he's been hurt before, and he kind of recovered well against Muhammad Usman. If a head kick lands and hits Parkin and hurts him, would not be surprised because, again, Marcin Tybura is this heavyweight. You don't lose athleticism when you're at heavyweight because you're never athletic. So it's a big risk, But I do think that Parkin can come out here and actually put him away in like the first or second round. I like Parkin's style. I don't quite think he's ready for those like athletic dudes who hit hard and can grapple and can strike with him. But Tybura, he's up there in age. He's getting rocked more and more. And I think Parkin's smart enough to not fall into the trap of swinging wildly after you got him hurt and letting him take over and get you to the ground. Because this guy, he's dangerous. It's just, I don't foresee him being able to win a decision, especially if he's getting hurt every time he gets hit. So, not to say he's got a terrible chin. It's just, again, he's been put out quite a bit of times in the past, and the game plan is there. Moving on, we've got Loney Kavanagh versus Felipe Dos Santos. 8-0, this kid. Minus 400. Dos Santos plus 310. I do think there's some disrespect on Dos Santos, but it's not unwarranted. I just think it's disrespectful that you're tossing this kid away. He does train out of Box, the same camp of a fighter who just fought Kavanagh in Ochoa. So you've got that, hey, what did you do? How did you do against this kid? He's really fast. What did we do? I don't think I need to explain what Kavanagh does. He's kind of like the flavor of the week. He's very good. We've seen what he can do. He's incredibly fast. He trains with a guy on the card, Nathaniel Wood. They fight almost similar, except that I think Kavanagh's just quicker. He's just more dynamic. He's got sky is the limit for this kid. But this is a rough spot for him where, he's going to get tested by a guy who has been in there with the number one contender in Manao Cop. And to me, in Lima, who I think can be a top 10 guy eventually. So they fed this guy to the wolves early on. And here's ultimately where I kind of came to my conclusion, because Kavanagh, incredibly talented. He should be able to beat Dos Santos. I don't think these odds are unwarranted, but to bet him, I think it's a different story. The speed is going to be the main factor here for Dos Santos. Kavanagh's head movement. He's always moving his head. He maintains distance beautifully. Let me go back and check my notes on him because I don't want to suck him off from memory. I'd rather suck him off from my script here. Yeah, excellent timing. This dude's been training since birth, and the footwork is just unmatched at this division. Like this guy gives me like top prospect vibes, but I need to see a little bit more from him. I just giving me the vibe yet. He's giving me the vibe, but I just need to see a little bit more visually, because there was a moment there against Ochoa where he did get hurt to the body and he shot for a takedown and he started to brawl with him. And that kind of gave me the impression that like maybe he's not been in a situation like that before. He is undefeated. And that was like a dude he could just not put away. Dos Santos is a tough guy. He has a good chin. He trains in Shuto box. The good news with that, he's brawling all the time. He's used to it. The bad news with that, he's brawling all the time, and God knows if he's the punching bag. But what ultimately led me to believe that Kavanagh's going to win this one either by a decision, which would be the safest route, or possibly a finish, because the timing and the speed's going to be there for Kavanagh, is the Altamirano fight. Like arguably, Dos Santos is 0-3 in the UFC. That Altamirano fight was a bad look for me. Hence, Altamirano's moving a lot. The footwork was just causing Dos Santos to kind of freeze. He's getting kicked from God knows what angles, and then he's getting taken down. I don't see Kavanagh taking him down, but I do see him teeping him and kicking him from odd angles and just moving and confusing the boy. It's just when Dos Santos decides that's enough and he decides to go, can he put hands on Kavanagh and hurt him, take his back? He does have solid jiu-jitsu. That is a huge risk. But if this is a standard Kavanagh fight, on the feet, just moving, attacking, he can catch Dos Santos. He can hit him with a nasty kick. This kid is so fast compared to Dos Santos that it's unfair. But again, this should be lined a lot closer, at least like a -200 for Kavanagh. That's very disrespectful to Dos Santos. I think it would not be out of the question for me to put a couple bucks on Dos Santos. But given the styles, I think if Felipe does not put it on the line early and say he does go berserk mode and just bum rushes Kavanagh, flying knees, and tries to take him down, which would be wise, take the boy down, attack the kicks, make him slow down. That more than likely that's going to be the game plan for Dos Santos. If that doesn't happen, Kavanagh is going to beat his ass. Maybe not finish him. We know he can take shots, but I think he's going to beat him up. And as long as he doesn't get finished, I think Kavanagh's style, given he's listed from China, he's from the UK, he's not going to lose the decision. So give me Kavanagh by decision. Next bout, one of the more difficult matchups at lightweight. Jai Herbert versus Chris Padilla, -120 on Herbert. Come back on Taco Padilla, +100. Let me confirm. I heard that the odds were flipping in the favor of Padilla. Yeah, they're getting closer, like a pick'em. My thoughts on this, I have always been a fan of Jai Herbert's style. I like his boxing. I like the way he uses his length. I like when he lets his hands go. When he lets his hands go, chin is god awful. He can get cracked and knocked out. He has improved tremendously where he's comfortable off of his back. He can get back up. Takedown defense has improved. He's a lightweight, that is. He is 6'1", 77-inch reach, uses the reach well. Good kicks. He just sometimes doesn't let the hands go, but when he does, he connects and it's beautiful. Chris Padilla, I've had my opinions on the guy, but what I've ultimately come down to is that despite him not necessarily fighting the greatest opposition, he does have some qualities to him that his biggest like weapon. It isn't his wrestling. It isn't his like well-rounded nature. It's his experience and true experience. And what I mean by that, and I'll talk about it in the fight later on, you may have 20 fights under your belt, but not be experienced at all, meaning that you might have beaten a ton of bums and you've never really been in a situation where you've had to fight for your life out of a submission, fight for your life after being hurt or rocked. And I think Padilla has been through that. He's been through a lot in his tenure to the UFC, but I do think like a nagging feeling is that they don't want Chris Padilla on the roster, the UFC that is, because they're more or less giving him Jai Herbert. Like Jai Herbert's not an easy out. Like he's expected to win, but the odds makers, given the success of Padilla, he beat a guy in Yontop who ended up being a bust because he got submitted, and then Rong Zhu, he beats him. But given the fact that I don't want to say it was a fluke elbow, it was a perfectly timed elbow. Don't get it twisted. It's just seeming to me like maybe the UFC doesn't want him in the like. He kind of upset the apple cart twice, if you know what I mean. Like they fed this guy on short notice to a guy they were high on, and he beat him. And then they bring in a guy from Road to the UFC who just won it, and then he beats him. It's almost like they want him gone. I get that feeling. But with Chris, so not to knock him, he's good. This guy's got good timing. Like he's not the fastest guy. He's not the most intimidating guy. But again, that experience can be deadly. The problem with that is that if this is a experience versus experience fight, Jai Herbert can still win that. He's fought the much better competition. He nearly beat Ludovic Klein in his rise to lightweight. Like he's doing great right now. His takedown defense has improved tremendously. He's offensively grappling. It's just if he gets hit on the button, it's a big concern. But a lot of people were picking Bedoya to do that, and he was doing well against Bedoya. Just the output wasn't quite there for me. Hence, like to me, it's a bit of a pass. But between you and me, given the night, I might end up betting Jai Herbert if he becomes a dog. I am gonna pick Herbert. I have no real like lean on this because I think if Herbert had a chin, he runs through Chris Padilla. I think that the takedown threat isn't going to be a real threat, given the fact that I think Herbert's takedown defense has tremendously improved. You know, he's training with Belal. I'm sorry, not Belal. I guess Belal's son and Edwards, and that's all they do is stuff takedowns. These guys are strikers, big long strikers. Padilla, good chin. I don't believe he's ever been put out like cold, because he's a solid, tough Mexican dude, right? With a nickname like Taco, you have to be. He has never. He's been TKO'd by Jason Gonzalez. I don't think, if I recall, it was like a clean knockout. Yeah, I'm starting to respect Padilla, but give me Herbert. I've never picked Padilla to win, so probably put some money on him because I'm bad at picking his fights. Next bout, main card opener. Jesus, Nathaniel Wood versus Morgan Charriere. The prospect at this point, dude, you're not a prospect. You got to be a contender versus the last pirate. Minus 185 for Charriere. Come back on Wood plus 155. Let me just get something out of the way. If you're going to look at the fight between him and Daniel Pineda and say, well, Pineda took him down and controlled him in round number 3, maybe Wood gasses, maybe this or that. I was under that impression too until I saw the fight where he beat the shit out of Pineda so bad that I do think that Nathaniel Wood just said, screw it, take me down. Why even try to get back up? Like, I can't knock you out. I don't want to break my hands on your fucking skull. Just tickle me from top control, whatever. He still won it 29-27, I believe, meaning he nearly TKO'd him. He got a 10-8 in one of the rounds. Wood is so good, especially at featherweight. His hands are ridiculously fast. Like, man, I love me some Nathaniel Wood. When he lets those combinations go, he is fun to watch. And this is a great fight because I'm high on Morgan Charriere. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Daniel Wood, also high-level jiu-jitsu. Charriere, judo black belt. Great striking. Um, he fought a guy in a huge streak, and you can arguably say that he is undefeated in the UFC as well in Chepe. Great fight between those two. Even watching it back, like I still go back and forth. Like one time I think it's Chepe that wins it, the other time I think it's Charriere who did it. It just depends on like the week and how I feel about Twitter talking about judging. But man, Charriere is solid. You look at his losses, a lot of those came from early on when this guy was just like fighting the fight and he would get dominated on the ground. This guy even lost to Jordan Vucenic in featherweight for the title. So this guy's fought some good guys. What I see is this going to be a great fight. Both guys can strike. Nathaniel Wood's got the boxing upside. He's so quick and he's powerful, and it's going to be a fabulous fight. That's how gay I am for this fight. I'll use the word fabulous. I'm leaning Charriere. The main reason is he's a bigger dude, and I think given the fact of how he fought Chepe and even mixed in some of his own takedowns and took him down, it was incredibly impressive. Despite him losing that, it was a very impressive performance. This guy is like going to the ground with Fly Miranda going into his guard like whatever, and then he knocks him out. The power, I think, is going to be on the edge of Charriere. I really enjoy watching the guy fight, both of them. So may the better man win. I'm leaning Charriere for the main reason that if he is going to mix in wrestling, I think he can take down Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel used to be bantamweight. And not only that, he did get knocked out by a flyweight in John Dodson, which oddly enough, years back, I saw that fight and I stayed away from it because I got that weird feeling in my stomach. The thing also about Wood is that he has been getting dropped a lot lately. Not to say he's got a bad chin, but he has been getting dropped. Naimov dropped him with like a flurry of goofy ass punches. Who else dropped him? Pineda hurt him as well. Feely dropped him. You know, there's just that fear that despite Wood being so technically good, if Charriere eats his punches and cracks him with a good one, he can drop him and possibly finish him. Charriere is not a guy that cannot finish you on the ground or on the mat with jiu-jitsu. I think he's very well-rounded. I think he kicks hard. I think he's going to be the bigger man. He's going to have to impose his will. It's not going to be an easy fight. This could also be another split decision, but I am leaning the Charriere side. Probably no bet for me, but I am hoping this is a banger. It's starting out the card for a reason. I'm hoping it does not end quick because I want to see how these two match up, because Nathaniel Wood has been getting lined up to fight Lerone Murphy for a while now, and I am interested to see how that fight plays out. If he can get past Charriere, I'd like to see that because it will get it won't happen now, but if it does get rescheduled at one point, I'm very intrigued by that. For Charriere, the same thing. Like, this guy's got very good potential. He's very marketable. I'm looking at it in the eyes of like the UFC. This guy, he's got the it factor, and I can't say that a lot about a lot of Frenchies. So give me Charriere to win this one. I actually think he can knock out Wood in like round number 2. I think early on Wood's going to be looking good. Those calf kicks are going to be doing a service here. Charriere is going to have to be very careful with those, but I think Charriere is very experienced as well, man. It's going to be a hell of a fight. Give me Charriere second round TKO. Next bout here, Jordan Vucenic versus Chris Duncan. Now, minus 345 on Vucenic. I saw his nickname, the epidemic Vucenic, versus the problem. I guess they're both problems if you think about it, except one's probably worse than the other. Like, a problem and Chris Duncan is like, oh no, I lost my keys, but an epidemic is like, we're gonna die because there's a Loner Kavanagh's mom let loose some flu from her home country, and now we're all gonna die. Anyways, Vucenic 13-3. He is minus 345. Comeback on Chris Duncan is plus 275. I barely did any tape on Duncan. Maybe that's a big no-no for me, but I kind of know what these guys are going to do. They're very similar, except that Duncan, big, powerful guy, he's 5'10". He's an upset merchant. I think this guy has been putting in his work with ATT, and it's been paying off. It's been paying off so much so that he's not getting knocked out every fight, which is great. He's been mixing in takedowns. He's using his physicality. The guy is so stiff at times. He's not the best striker, but he can hit hard. He hits pretty damn hard. That's a good saving grace for the guy, but he doesn't move his head. He's so hittable. Vucenic used to be a featherweight, moves up. He's the only, well, no, yes, I will say that. He's the only man to beat Paul Hughes. Take that for what you will. And he also beat Morgan Charriere. This guy, he has great jiu-jitsu, brown belt in jiu-jitsu. His boxing is very clean. The fact that he dropped Guram and made people think that Guram is a bum is nuts to me, because like that is not something you do easily. He's got power in his hands. He's got the jiu-jitsu to do whatever he wants. The biggest concern I have about Vucenic is he can get comfortable playing off of his back. He has a rubber guard. You know how rubber guard guys are. He's like, I'm going to submit you with a twister, or I'm going to get you with a executioner or some bullshit like that. So he can be a little too, comfortable playing off of his back. But if this stays on the feet, this guy is crisp. He moves his head. He tucks his chin. It's so sad that in the year of our Lord 2025, when a guy tucks his chin and keeps his hands up, I'm just like, oh my god, he's so hot. He does that well. Duncan does not. Will Duncan try to shoot in for takedowns? If he does, I think Jordan's going to try to snatch up the neck. He's got a nasty guillotine as well. Duncan does as well. But when we look at the Oki fight, if Oki just, it's so crazy. Yeah, he won. I'm glad, whatever. But if Oki did not trip going for that takedown and land on his knees, and Duncan not just be Dustin Poirier told me that you miss 100% of the gillies you don't jump. If he didn't jump for that guillotine, or if Oki didn't just fall to his knees at that point, Duncan would not be fighting in this card. He'd be fighting in like fucking Des Moines, Iowa next week or something. But in this fight, man, like I just see him getting hurt. I see him getting wobbled by the faster guy. I don't think Vucenic hits as hard as Duncan, but he is more precise and he's more accurate. I think he's the better grappler, and he is my third leg for my dumb little parlay. Duncan, just the fact he just is so hittable that I cannot get behind that. And I think he's fighting a very good mirror matchup to him, but just a much better, slightly younger guy. The odds indicate that. But then again, Duncan has pulled off upsets in the past. It's just you cannot get too overexcited when you see Duncan kind of like wobbling and shit. So as long as Vucenic doesn't do that, which I don't predict he will, hence again mentioning tucks his chin, keeps his hands up, nipple rub, he's going to do well. So give me Vucenic inside the distance, round number 1 or 2. I think he can knock him out, but if he does want that neck mid him stumbling into him, he can take the neck. Next bout. All right, Molly McCann versus Alexia Thainara. Minus 190 on Alexia. Molly McCann is plus 150. Now, I did see, because I didn't care about this fight, I didn't know what the original line was. Let's go back here. That's not it. Molly McCann. What did she open as? She opened, motherfucker. I need to know what she opened up as. Because I could have sworn that Alexia was the underdog at one point. Sorry for wasting your time, but it's probably better than talking about this fight. What was the opening line? There we go. Ooh, okay. Molly was minus 426. That doesn't seem right. Maybe that was against some other broad. Yeah, so Thainara opened up plus 326, and then she got steamed all the way up to minus 190. And I'm curious about that. That seems very odd. Why is the public on Alexia? Like, she's 11-1. She's the same height as Molly. She's younger, 27 to 34, so 7 years younger. 4 to 5 inches in reach, trains with Amanda Hebas. That's all good and dandy, but I wonder if people have taped her. Because when I mentioned about being having being experienced, but not necessarily being experienced. Like you might have the experience, but you're not experienced. Like I mentioned with Chris Padilla, like he's been through it. I don't think Alexia has. And like to me, very similar to like what's her name, Yasmin Lucindu. Like she's very green in my eyes. Like shit. Like I don't care if it's 1 week, 1 day, or a week. If a banana that you just picked is green, it's green. And that's what I'm seeing from Thainara. Like she has a background in capoeira, and when I saw her contender series fight, that's fine and dandy to win like that in the contender series where your opponent's really not fighting back. But what you are doing to this girl was not impressive. She was very bad striking. For being a capoeira girl, her kicks were not impactful. She seemed very like wild with her punches. She does go for takedowns. She does have a lot of submissions on her name, which is very, very good for her here against Molly McCann. Molly is not a, you know, she's not a pushover, but you can sub her. She's been subbed in her home country before, but she's a big star in the UK, right? She's going to come out to her music. Everyone's going to go wild for her. And my thought is if Molly doesn't get finished, and we saw her last fight, she got beat up bad. She got punted, and then she got hit to the body, and she didn't give up. So this girl at straw weight, she's more durable, but her body is more susceptible to getting hurt. And I'll talk about the game plan with Bruna, but back to Thainara. I'm watching her fights and she's beating bums, man. Like she's beating people that she should be beating. She's beating people that should make her look good. She's beating people that should get her to 11-1, but when you're running through girls with your bad technique, you're not learning anything. You're just beating people with bad technique, and it seems like she got to the UFC with that. And I understand fading Molly, right? I'm all for it. I'm 100% fade Molly. I faded her in the past. I think I picked her to beat Stoliarenko, but I faded the shit out of her. I'm like, hey, the money's there. If she gets subbed, she gets subbed. If not, she'll probably beat the shit out of her, but it's worth a shot. The thing with her is, with Thainara, is that I don't think there might be a finishing upside, but I'm just not comfortable with it. Like she doesn't seem to hit hard. She doesn't seem to be very physical. Like she's just very like, I don't know, man, like very limp noodle. And Molly's, she's a tough bull, DYKE, and bitch is, you know, she's getting her protein in, let's just say. She's the much better striker. She hits harder. She's been through it. She's fought better competition. And I kind of think she's getting a little disrespected. I understand, again, the Molly McCann fade, but in this spot, I think she's got a chance, man. Like if she doesn't get finished or dominated, and again, she's gonna have a reach disadvantage, but I think she might be the stronger of the two here. I think she can put Alexia on the ground and kind of make her a fish out of water. I think she could probably ragdoll her. I think she can hit her harder to the stomach, work the body. Between the two, if Alexia hits her, she probably land before Molly, but I kind of like Molly in this spot. It feels weird to say. Again, like I'm looking at Alexia and back to her record, I was gonna look. She's fighting 0-0 girls, and she's giving me more experienced Dubin vibes, but she's a little bit better than Dubin, where she's actually taking girls down and trying to work the ground game. She's getting subs, so it's not like she's terrible. She did fight and lose to Bruna Brazil. She got choked out, which is another thing. She had adversity there, and it was a standing guillotine. And this was years ago, so it's hard to oh wow, but it's the only loss. I got to talk about it. She's getting guillotined, and it's her third fight against a pretty tough opponent. She's winning, but she gets in that guillotine choke and she doesn't fight it, and it's almost like she accepted defeat. It's just odd, not a visually good, appealing look. But yeah, 0-0, 7-4. Amanda, she was in the UFC, but whatever. 0-1, 3-1, 0-1, 5-1, 9-6, and then finally Rose Campaniano or whatever, 7-1. So she's padding kind of her record. She's kind of beating girls by beating them. The girl on the contender series that Rose, she didn't seem to want anything to do with the fight. She was just kind of getting pushed back. Molly's gonna go in there, and my thought is, because I think about the judging and the crowd, and anytime Molly throws anything that doesn't even land, they're going to try to give it to her. Molly's already beaten one dark skinned girl in the UK. Why not another? She's got that spinning back elbow. I think this is a good shot. Like, I'm taking a shot on Molly, right? Like, I think fading Molly is good when she's a favorite, but when she's a dog, she is a dog. And if they're giving her a girl who's not ready and she's only in the UFC because, you know, she she fought Bruna Brazil, I think that Molly can come out here and win a decision. I think it could be a grimy little decision where it could be a split. It'll be like, for example, the judges score at 30-27, Thainara, 29-28, McCann, and 30-27. And then Thainara's like, bro, the winner by split decision, Molly. And everyone's like, and she's just like, what happened? I can see it. So give me McCann by a decision, if not even a knockout. Again, Thainara is just so bad on the feet. She could have evolved by then, but I've spent too much time talking about this one. I'm just giving you my thoughts on it. I might be an absolute idiot. But next bout, we've got Kevin Holland back at 170, plus 125, comeback on Nelson, plus 150. Gunnar Nelson, very inactive. Hasn't fought since 2 years ago. He is apparently teaching jiu-jitsu, so his jiu-jitsu is getting better. Highly inactive. Kevin, on the other hand, very active but losing. Fighting bigger guys at 170. It's an interesting fight. I'm not going to blame anyone for taking Kevin, but the thing with Kevin is that he is so hard to bet on and be confident in. I have zero confidence in Holland. I think this is going to be a difficult fight for Gunnar Nelson. The problem is if Gunnar gets it to the ground, Kevin does have a black belt. Kevin has been submitted a lot, but usually big dudes are the ones manhandling him. He does much better with these smaller guys. Gunnar has that karate style. It's a very, what's the word? It's very like 50-50. It's a lot of risk and reward. He darts in and he can be quick with it, but he's 36. He's a lot slower. If Kevin can crack him with something, he can drop him. I think this is a very good spot for Kevin to get back on track at 170. Problem is, what Kevin are we getting? Is the old Kevin who wanted to make a run, is he gone? He's talking to Rampage Jackson, and he's just like, I don't give a shit about the belt. Like, he has no ambition. It just sucks like that. Like, you can definitely fade him. The way I'm seeing it, I'm going to go with Gunnar by a submission, because if he does take him down, and Gunnar's fought, elite guys in the past. He's fought and nearly beat Leon Edwards, who's a tall guy as well. It's just that if Kevin keeps it on the feet, man, I think he can use that jab. He's got a significant reach advantage. He's going to be a stronger guy. It's just Holland is not a guy I feel comfortable with picking ever again. I don't have any good feelings with Gunnar, man. Like, I think Gunnar is just a bad car crash waiting to happen. And by that, I mean he's going to blitz in, trying to get the takedown, and he's going to get hit with an elbow or a long-ass jab that hurts him. Like, he's not a spring chicken anymore. And it's just that if it does become a jiu-jitsu match, Gunnar has out-wrestled bigger guys. Jeff Monson, the what's his name? The Snowman. It's, to me, fight doesn't go the distance, okay? I think Gunnar can submit him. If not, Kevin Holland's going to beat his ass. This one, I don't have any real, like, I've done the tape, but, like, I think Kevin has a good chance here. But, man, when Kevin starts telling you, like, I don't care, he's posting images of himself, like, as a McDonald's worker, like, I don't know how to take that. There's joking around. Like, I'll joke around and talk shit about myself all the fucking time. I got a hat that says I'm a TigerBomb. But when this dude is not taking himself seriously, like, he's not working hard, and I see his training, I just cannot trust him. Like, as much as I think he's got a shot here, if Nelson takes his back, it's going to be a wrap. So give me Nelson, probably round number 1 or 2, to win this one by a submission. Next bout, we've got Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. Plus 185 on Blachowicz. Come back on Ulberg. He is minus 225. Now, I think, if I am not mistaken, I might have a possibly perfect record, maybe not, with Ulberg. Like, I think I have a pretty good record on betting Ulberg. At one point years ago, I hated Carlos Ulberg, right? Because I see the talent. I see what he can do. And I'm like, you know what? He's fighting Fabio Charriere, chinniest guy in Chinsville. They imported him directly from Chinsville, and they had to wrap him up with a ton of fucking bubble wrap so he doesn't get chinned on the way to the UFC event. And then he goes in there and he goes to a decision with Fabio Charriere. And guess what I bet? I bet he knocks him out. Didn't even try. So it pissed me off for a long time. And then he starts, his run where he's fast and he's knocking dudes out and he's showing his potential. But what I've noticed about Ulberg is when you fatigue him, like in the Kennedy fight, because I actually picked Kennedy to beat his ass. And he, lo and behold, did. Like, he let it all out, but he's learned a lot since then. There's a couple things going on with Ulberg at this point. I think the morale in his camp is a little low, just given the circumstances with Izzy. He is not Izzy. He is obviously a much bigger guy. He's fast. Doesn't diddle dogs, to my knowledge. Maybe he's a cat guy. I don't know. His nickname is Black Jag for a reason. Maybe that's his lover's name. But with Ulberg, like, he is talented, ridiculously talented. He's smooth on the feet, like good boxing. At least the combinations wise, he's very good. But he's fighting a world champion in Jan Blachowicz. You look at the age difference, and you're like, well, duh, it's fucking 8 years. John hasn't fought since he fought Alex, and he looked terrible in that spot. I'm going to explain to you why I'm going to go with Jan Blachowicz by either more than likely a decision, given the fact that Ulberg is probably going to move around a lot, decision or knockout, because Jan Blachowicz, for me, he has to be completely washed to lose to Ulberg, and I don't think that's the case. When you look at his last two fights, one was a draw, but he arguably beat Magomed Ankalaev. You can make an argument. You might not like it, but you can make the argument that he beat him by just kicking the shit out of his legs. And then you can also make the argument that he beat Alex Pereira. Now, I did go back and watch that fight. I did have a bet on Pereira at that time. I was in Salt Lake City. That altitude fucking sucks. So he completely showed it in that fight. Okay, that altitude kicked my ass when I was out there for those fights. Now, in that fight, he didn't get knocked out. He had some promising moments, but he did lose that fight. Like, I know some might say I think he beat him. No, he lost that fight. Not because I'm a nut hugger, you already know, on Pereira. But going back, I was like, initially I thought, yeah, I think he might have beaten him. First round, 100% him. He didn't do enough in the last two rounds. He kind of got outpointed, and he looked visibly fatigued. Now, given the fact that he only lost to the former champ and now went to a draw with the current champ, that puts a lot of stock in there with me. This guy's not done yet. He hasn't fought in a while, almost a year and 7 months. What he brings to the table is his experience. He's got the black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's going to have the wrestling upside. He's going to have 5-round experience if he needs to go out there. He has experience fighting the best of the best. He's fought guys like Carlos in the past. He has fought up-and-comers. He has ridiculously dangerous hands with that legendary Polish power. The thing that is the key to victory for Jan is his stupid hard low kicks, the ones that just do damage to him, like the Pokemon, what's his name, fucking Golem, like self-destruct. Let's just see which one of our shins explodes first. And I think it's going to be Ulberg. Ulberg relies heavily on that speed. And if you attack the body, Jan has some nasty body kicks. Jan can mix in takedowns. Jan beat Izzy. You know what I'm saying? He's fought this style before. He's game planned for this style before. It's just that this is a much more dangerous guy who's very fast. When you kick the shit out of the legs, it's going to slow down Ulberg. It could even hurt Ulberg to the point that he's going to maybe have to take a knee or something or go to his back. I just see Jan having a lot of upside here, being the denser of the two. Not only that, if you want to get into like voodoo bullshit, this guy's going back to the murder tree. Well, I guess I can't say, whatever, fuck it, it doesn't matter. Suicide tree, where the dude hung himself, and he's got that necklace that he made out of the bracelet he made out of the rope. He's channeling this dark energy to murder Carlos Ulberg. I respect it. Ulberg's path to victory, he's got two, in my opinion. He's going to have to catch Jan early and hurt him, probably knock him out. Jan's been knocked out before. He's been hurt. particularly by like fast dudes, or he's going to have to get on his bike and just outpoint him from distance and just avoid the fight. I don't know if he can do that consistently. And on top of that, is it going to be a good look if he does that? They're going to feed him to something. Like, imagine Carlos wins by prancing and dancing around like the fairy that he is, and he wins by a terrible decision. And then they're like, you know who you're going to get next? We're going to give you Alex Pereira. Let's see how you do about that. You know, UFC, they want exciting fights, but I think Jean is the side here. I was trying to fight it this whole time, but after seeing his fight, his real fight against Uzdemir, when you look at his he's beating Ihor, who sucks. He's beating Dao Jung, who is just the husk of his former self. He got submitted. Alonzo Menafield just ran right into him. The only guy who gave him any trouble was Ozdemir, and he kicked the shit out of his legs. I'm expecting Ulberg to be checking them here, but I don't think it's going to matter. What Loughran didn't do was like threaten kicks to the body. He didn't clinch. He didn't do what was necessary to slow down a guy like Ulberg, and that's what differentiates him from being a former UFC title contender to a former UFC champion in Jan Blachowicz. So I'm liking the odds on Blachowicz. I've seen dudes post a decision on Blachowicz before, and I think that's a good sign. I might just stick to the money line. Won't get too greedy, but I like this fight for Jean. You know, he's a big boy. He's a light heavyweight. They don't tend to lose power. And as long as he's not fully washed, it's going to be a great fight. And then we've got finally main event. Man, every time I see Leon Edwards, I unfortunately say Belal Muhammad, and it sucks. I just hate it. I hate that because Leon, that is, completely shit the bed against Muhammad. And let me get into it in a second. But we've got Leon Edwards, former champion, plus 125 against Sean Brady, minus 150. You and I, we all know the reason why Sean Brady is going to be the favorite here, because he's got the grappling upside. And what we saw from Edwards was complete mental breakdown. Now, here's the thing. Let me just quickly break down the Belal Muhammad fight. He was looking good until he just stopped fighting. And then he had moments where he was looking good and then he stopped fighting. How many times do I need to hear his corner say, you got to wake up in there, Leon. You got to do something. I cannot. He's already lost at home before. He arguably lost against Muhammad Usman. Not Muhammad Usman, sorry. What the hell's his name? Kamaru Usman in the UK before. If he's willing to pull that stunt in a title fight in his home country, allegedly, then is he willing to do it again here against a contender? He's already talking like, oh, if Belal can finish you, then I can finish you. Leon Edwards is a very complete fighter. He's got tremendous striking, nasty elbows. He's got great offensive grappling, improved defensive grappling, terrible brain. His brain does not work. His will to fight it gets lost somehow. So he's on that shit list for life, man. But what pisses me off about the Belal fight is whatever happened in his brain, if he was a smarter gentleman, he could have easily won that fight. And by that, I mean he could have offensively grappled Belal and found a way. I don't think he's got the chops or the grit to be a champion. And unfortunately, Belal was able to outgrit him in that fight. When we saw the last moments of that fight, the true potential of Leon was him blasting Belal with elbows and cutting him up. He made it look easy. And it was unfortunate that he made me think he was elite. Because when I see that, there's a glimmer of hope that makes me think that Leon Edwards has it in him. Like his true potential, and I say that often, the true potential version of these guys are great. But now that we know that this guy's got a broken brain, what do we do with that? Sean Brady, another guy who lost to Belal, and it was an embarrassing loss because he got TKO'd by a guy who can't even finish like his breakfast in the morning, because apparently they eat a lot of food, what I'm saying? Anyways, but with Brady, minus 150, I understand it. The narrative police will say, well, who did he beat? He nearly lost to Chiesa, who took his back and whipped his ass. He got TKO'd by Belal Muhammad. He beats the ghost of Kelvin Gastelum at 170. And he beats the ghost of Gilbert Burns. What I will say, right, because I wanted to eat that narrative too. The Sean Brady fight against Gilbert Burns was actually impressive. And what I mean is that he completely changed the way he fought. He was moving forward. And maybe it was just the fact that he had a guy who used to be a lightweight, but he was mixing things up well. He didn't have that fear anymore, like of getting hit. He was moving forward. He would get hit. He would return. He threw a ton of punches. Let me actually calculate here for you. He threw 217 punches in that fight, in a 5-round fight, landed 130 of them. Well, significant strikes, my bad. He actually threw 368 strikes and landed 274 of them. That is highly impressive. Now, we take that version of Sean Brady and we put him in here with Leon Edwards. Say the same old Leon Edwards that he's great and all, but he lacks that offense. He just wants to find the perfect shot. This is a tough fight because if Brady moves forward, we know he's going to want to get those takedowns. If Edwards, who will he won't do this, I doubt it, will uncharacteristically move forward himself, Brady's going to have a tougher time trying to get those takedowns. Like you push him back, you pressure him. If you pressure Sean Brady, he panics. He wasn't pressured in his last fight, so we didn't get to see if he panicked. But he was offensively better. It was a sign in the right direction. I'm not touching this one, but what I'm going to say is that if Brady looks like he did against Gilbert and he moves forward, I think he's got a good chance to break Leon, because it's not incredibly hard to break Leon if you are willing to do it, if you're willing to put in the work. If Brady, on the other hand, is having trouble with the reach, because this is a big dude and we've seen him have trouble with lesser strikers in Chiesa, and Chiesa was looking like Mayweather against Brady. I don't want to see that glazed look on Brady's eyes where he's like, oh, he's stuck against the cage. What I will say as well about Brady, his chin isn't bad. I think that was a bit of an early stoppage. It was just bad visuals against Belal. He got hit and he just reacted horribly. And that was a good learning lesson for him. It was kind of expected. He had yet to taste defeat, and now he knows what it feels like. And that's why I like certain seasoned fighters, to know what it feels like to get hit and persevere. Thainara, I'm looking at you. So it's tough. The path to victory for Leon, knee this boy to the body, crush his fucking esophagus, you just waste his energy trying to take you down. It's going to come less and less. He will be huffing and puffing. You have to make him work. You have to hurt him to the body. In the clinch, if Leon can just grab a hold of the wrist and then just start blasting to the body, it's going to slow down Brady regardless. 5 rounds or not. I think Leon does have good enough grappling offensively and defensively to survive Sean, like getting his back taken. This, I think, is going to go into like the 3rd and 4th rounds. I think it's going to go over. Now, for sake of just being lazy, I am going to take Brady to win this one by a decision. I think, again, he can pressure, and if Leon starts feeling that, it's going to make Leon fall back into that, like, what are you doing, son? Wake up moment, It's going to suck having money on him. But here's the thing about live betting. If Leon's looking decent, it's still a risk, because he can definitely win the first round, look great, and then fall back into that like dark sunken place, I suppose. Let's just blame it on racism. Racism will make him feel bad, and then like he'll lose. If he starts doing that, then bail. But if Leon got a good psychologist and is just like, hey, here's why, blah, blah, blah. This is why you do this. Maybe you used to hide under the bed when it started raining and you suck your dumb. It makes you gay. Maybe if you accept that you're gay, maybe you can fight better. Maybe gay Leon Edwards comes out here and he looks like a killer. Who knows? But, it worked pretty well for Jeff Molina, right? He undefeated in the UFC. Undefeated in that bed, what that mouth do. If Leon Edwards has gotten his shit together, I think he's dangerous. I think he's a former champion, for God's sakes. But again, we've seen it on multiple occasions. Heavy pressure wrestling can make him fumble and crack. So by that default, I have to go with Brady. I think Brady, I don't think he can contend with the top of the division. Remember when he was paired up with Jack Della? I was seeing people, me included, being like, Jack's going to feast on this boy because Jack is a different beast, man. Jack was also going to fight Leon Edwards. Jack is a different beast. There's a reason they gave him the title shot and not Brady. You know what I'm saying? Uh, he's a different kind of animal. This guy, he's never gonna doubt it. This guy is so ballsy. He'll be like, "Yeah, I'll shoot not shoot on. I'll jump a guillotine on a black belt. Like I don't care. I don't care. I'll jump a guillotine on a black belt." So yeah, give me Brady to win this one by a decision. I think it's going to be icky mucky, and again, British crowd. It didn't save him last time, but the British crowd can be there. But here's the thing about the British crowd: you're gonna have to do something for them to actually cheer for you. Will the crowd be on Leon's side after that horrible performance? We shall see. But again, give me Brady, and may God have mercy on my soul. Let me know what you think about the comments. Leave a comment about all that. Let me know what you think about Meatball. Am I just nuts for thinking that, she's somewhat live? The main event, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that. The co-main event, particularly. I know people are like, Ulberg, he should win this one. Like, I've been on Ulberg. I've max bet Ulberg in the past. This is a completely different beast. So, again, Johnny TigerBomb MMA, and I will catch you in the next fight.